Welcome to the Trumpet of the last few days. I am Stanley Farrar.
I'm Robert Farrar.
And I'm Joshua Farrar.
You know, after all the hoopla in the media over how bad it would be if Trump pulled the troops out of Afghanistan and Iraq, now Biden is declared that they will be out this year, and the media is not saying a thing.
Out by September.
Out by September.
You know, I was thinking about it a while ago, and theoretically, if we just bombed Beijing and let the power vacuum do the rest, it would collapse into like 12 different countries.
Or more.
Probably more than that.
Then we wouldn't have a problem, and Taiwan would be left alone.
The problem is that they won't do it. That being said, though, I have no problem with us getting out of Afghanistan. Why were we in Afghanistan in the first place again?
For what time?
9/11. 9/11.
Was that Afghanistan or was that Iraq? I can't even remember.
That was both, actually.
Why?
Taliban.
9/11, the Taliban took and funded and trained the terrorists that attacked the World Trade Center.
But the Taliban's not the government.
It was never a war against their government.
Yet we invaded their country.
Their government was supporting the Taliban. The Taliban ran their government.
So after we toppled their government, we should have left them alone.
No, we should have wiped out the Taliban. But when the Democrats came into power, they quickly took and went through and made rules of engagement that tied the hands of our troops, and therefore it was a waste of time for us to even be there.
And then Lindsey Graham. You can see the giant horn coming straight out of his nose. He's a rhino.
And we lose all our safeguards if we take and go through and pull the troops out of Afghanistan. You've got to keep them there. They're our only insurance policy.
Tell me, are we going to subjugate Afghanistan? Or
no,
are they
we're
going
not.
to be admitted into the Union? Or at least as a territory of the Union? If not, why? And we're not there. We're clearly not wiping out the Taliban, so what's the point at this stage?
If we were to take them over as a territory, I could justify keeping our troops there. If we were actually going to wipe out the enemy, I could justify keeping our troops there.
In fact, if we were there for oil, which would allow us to drop oil prices here, I could justify our purpose there. But that's not happening either.
No. As it is, as Iran is the world's leading supporter and trainer of terrorists in the world, not Afghanistan.
I don't want a war with Iran either. I mean, at this point, we're just going to get slogged down in another endless war if we do.
It's also a pretty decent Flock of Seagulls song.
Yes, it is. But when you look at when it comes to Iran, we could actually take them down by simply enforcing the sanctions that Trump imposed. We wouldn't actually have to go to war with them.
And if we did, look at who's president. Look at what happened under the last Democrat presidents when we got embroiled in the Middle East.
Thing is, I'm not very...
Oh, yeah, he's worthless.
I'm 25. I'm not very old, all things considered. But I seem to remember a time way back in distant 2008 when the Democrats ran on the idea of pulling us out of the Middle East.
Yes.
Whatever happened to that?
Well, interestingly enough, you remember the Ukraine situation? When Russia came in,
Robert, you got to be consistent here. Is it the Ukraine situation or is it just Ukraine situation?
Well, the situation. Therefore, I am being consistent due to the English language.
Oh my!
But you remember that situation? How Russia came in, they took the Crimea, and didn't give it back.
Yeah.
And we have a treaty with Ukraine that states if Russia attacks, we attack. Russia, not Ukraine.
We didn't even end up with the Crimea River.
Oh, no. Something happened. Something definitely happened. Our glorious President Obama took and went through, and he took and sent them loads of blankets.
When he was supposed to be sending them guns.
That's right. But he sent them blankets.
Well, now something's changed in the political winds. Because suddenly, the current administration, I'm not going to say Biden, because let's be honest, Biden, he couldn't even remember the name
of the
Johnson & Johnson vaccine.
Oh, he couldn't remember the name of the ATF.
Didn't he call it the AFT?
He called it the AFT over and over and over and over. Well, the name of the agency is the Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms.
Now, I think you guys are being a bit too hard on him. You can't expect that much from a guy who can't climb stairs.
But anyway, his administration is now eyeing a dual war against Russia and its client state, Iran. Because one war at a time just isn't good enough. You have to feed...
Oh, you forget one other thing. They've continued Trump's policies with Taiwan, and they've now gone through and made it official that they are diplomatically talking and dealing with Taiwan and trying to improve relations with Taiwan. Therefore, they're in direct conflict with China, and we're sending troops and ships into the South China Sea to stop the Chinese from taking over the South China Sea.
And it's
we're on the verge of war with China as
time.
Well.
Remember,
it's about time.
One of those three wars I actually support. As funny as that is to say. But...
well, let's be honest. The Democrats were not content to be in the pocket of China forever. Now that they got what they wanted from China, now they're trying to free themselves. This isn't a surprise. This is politics. You can't be... they're not willing to be the servant class forever.
But potentially starting World War III to do it?
They don't care. They don't care how many lives they cost them for power.
If you stop and
Do you remember
Except
what
for
they said when Trump first got into office? Oh, he's going to start World War III! He's going to get... North Korea's going to launch nukes at us!
Let's look at this from a very, very political view, right? What is the one thing that would cause our nation to reunite and consolidate the power of the Democrats at this point?
A major...
World War
even that wouldn't do
III.
it. And that wouldn't work. Not this time. It's not the 1940s.
That's true enough.
And we haven't been attacked.
If you stop and you look at every war we have been in since the rise of the Democrat and Republican Party, because both trace themselves back to the 1800s.
Yeah.
Democrats are longer than the Republicans. There have been 3 Republican presidents that have started a war.
Which 3? And which wars?
Abraham Lincoln.
Lincoln and the 2 Bushes.
Lincoln did not start. I'm sorry.
He's credited as it anyway.
It was the Democrats who started that war.
Now,
Robert,
I agree. They did shoot first.
can't just go sweeping under the rug the Northern War of Aggression.
Yeah, Fort Sumter. Fort Sumter was an aggressive move by the North, I have to admit.
Well, they didn't evacuate the fort. It was no longer American territory.
They didn't evacuate the fort, but they didn't attack anyone.
No, but see, that's the way the South viewed it. They did not evacuate the forts that were in the southern region,
and
they continued.
They should have known they weren't going to evacuate the fort.
Yeah, but the point is, not evacuating those forts is an act of war.
It's an act of war, but it's not true aggression.
The
true aggression was when they battered down the fort.
I'm not saying the South is right in this case, but it is aggression. They could not afford to leave those places in Union control and have any degree of political influence in the outside world whatsoever.
But they
couldn't claim to be independent.
But they still didn't actually start the war. The actual war started when the shots were fired on Fort Sumter.
Now, see, the South would disagree with you on that one.
I would disagree with Robert on that one. Now, that's not accurate of how war works.
The very fact that they didn't acknowledge the secession and refused to abandon
that meant the war was going to start. That doesn't mean it had started.
No, that is war has started at that point. As soon as they don't abandon what is officially your territory in that regard, the war has started. And that's an invasion right there. And they cannot politically or economically leave that be. Not if they want to have any autonomy whatsoever. War has started already at that point.
Now there is things they could have done. They could have blockaded it.
Yeah, that's probably the correct option.
And then it would have been the U.S. military that would have fired the first shots instead of the Confederacy.
And then suddenly they're the victims on a political front.
If you blockade Fort Sumter and you prevent any new supplies coming in and have the exception of if you leave, we will let you go, that would have worked just fine. It's standard siege tactic.
Yes, but they wouldn't have left. They were fired.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they wouldn't have left. They would have fired.
We both know that. But
at that point,
it would have given them...
But at that point in time, they would have made the Democrats the victims rather than the aggressors.
That's true. But that would have hardly mattered
But they don't
considering
really
the
have a
political
problem with
clout
being
of the
there.
North at the time and the other countries. Because things like that only matter to outside forces. They don't matter to the two at war.
No, they don't. Not till after the fact.
Now,
Not till long after
when
the
it
fact.
comes to our current situation, the Democrats are not opposed to aggressive action. If they were opposed to aggressive action, they wouldn't be taking and letting all these leftist rioters off the hook.
Yeah.
So that shows if you're right wing and you were to do it, you'd go to prison. If you're left wing, they let you out. That shows that it's their people, and and they support them. So they have no problem with aggression. And if you look at, okay, the war started. Okay, we'll just put it this way: the war started during Lincoln's administration. Both Bushes invaded Iraq and Afghanistan. Well, one invaded Iraq, the other one invaded Iraq and Afghanistan. So we had two Gulf Wars that we've yet to pull our troops out of 20 years later. The fact is that those are the only Republicans that have ever had a war start during their administration. You could say Eisenhower or with the Korean War, but it wasn't a war. It was a police action, and it was the United Nations that started it.
I thought it started under Truman.
And you're right, it did. It started under Truman. So we have...
Eisenhower couldn't climb stairs either, though.
Wait, why couldn't?
That's true, he
couldn't. Because he was wheelchair-bound from polio.
That's Roosevelt.
No, that was Roosevelt.
Oh, you're right, Roosevelt. Yeah. Got it mixed up.
You take, okay, the Spanish-American War, started by Democrats. The Mexican-American War, started by Democrats. World War I, the Democrats got us into. World War II, the Democrats got us into. Korea, the Democrats got us into. Vietnam, the Democrats got us into it. The Democrats love war. The more people they can kill, the better.
And it makes zero sense.
And it makes a lot of sense in a political standpoint.
The thing about it is they're also the party of the anti-war peaceniks.
Yeah, but they were only
anti-war because that comes
Republicans were in office.
That comes from the fact that Republicans are stubborn. Republicans do not like to quit a war that is halfway done. They don't like it.
You can't blame them. I mean,
so when the Democrats start a war and the war turns over to Republican leadership, which almost always happens because, well, there's a reason why we trade parties every so often for elections, but they can then use the excuse of the Republicans wanting to finish what was started as a way to build a political clout. In fact, I don't think it's as coincidental as a lot of people seem to think. I think it's done by design.
Well, think about it. Eisenhower had to finish Korea. Nixon had to finish Vietnam. Trump tried to finish the Forever Wars.
Very nearly did. And he probably would have succeeded if he had gotten his second term.
Well, the only reason why Biden's pulling them out of Afghanistan is because of Trump. He'd set a hard deadline, and Biden couldn't back out.
Oh yeah. Now when it comes down to it, the neocons, as they're called, and that gets me is when they start calling neoconservative, the new conservatives. They're not conservatives. They're warmongers. They're all globalists. So if they're and are determined to enforce Pax Americanas, if they were truly following a conservative position, they would take a more isolationist position and let these countries rip themselves apart.
I stand by the isolationist position, but at the same time, I ain't no dove.
Well, I tend to be a little hawkish, in fact, but I don't think we need to be in somebody else's war. Now, I think we should have burned Afghanistan to the ground. But that's because they started it.
Yeah.
They should have turned it to glass. And for that matter, they should have turned Saudi Arabia into glass too, because every one of those terrorists was from Saudi Arabia. They may have been funded and backed by Afghanistan, but every one of them were from Saudi Arabia.
I have one word
So
of why they would never do that, though.
Oil.
Dubai.
No, I don't want to buy. Pitch your sales pitch somewhere.
Dubai is probably the largest and wealthiest individual city in the entire United Arab Emirates.
Yes, but the UAE is not Saudi Arabia.
The UAE is not Saudi Arabia. But, apart from Bahrain, it bankrolls the entire region, including every single one of those little oil empires. Bahrain is just their Las Vegas.
Now, if you take a look at the policies that whoever is running things in Washington right now is actually enforcing, they're carrying on some of the major Trump policies that they were condemning before they got in office.
I wonder how much of it is because they lack the political clout to do otherwise, and how much of it's because they actually want to continue those policies.
I don't know, because if you take a look at the banning, because they've increased the companies on the ban list from China instead of decreasing it.
Goes to show you they're not totally
Biden
morons.
ran on that he was going to do away with that ban list that Trump had, and instead he's increased it. Now I grant you that he's turned around and, like an idiot, opened up the country to all these terrorist nations, and he's basically opened up the southern border. But that's because he's trying to appease his corporate backers that want slave labor.
Not completely opened up the southern borders. There's more kids in cages than there has been in decades.
It's because kids aren't as useful as adults.
Fair point.
I still say I have a solution for that.
Yeah, adopt them out.
Adopt them out.
If you're going to send your kid all the way from
If they're
Guatemala to the U.S. by themselves,
you're unfit. You're an unfit parent. Adopt them out. change their names, give them a new identity, because they are now part of another family. They can't be used as an anchor child, which is what they want, is to use them being here in the United States as a way to get the rest of the family in the country legally. Take and adopt them out. Now they're part of another family entirely. You can't use them as an anchor child. You gave them up when you sent them over.
On a side note, here's an idea. What if all of the adults who came in, rather than being let catch and release, they are caught, they have to work through a 10-year sentence where they've built the border wall, and then they are released back into Mexico?
I would support that. Except for the fact they shouldn't be released back into Mexico. They should be released back into their country of birth.
They can walk.
Yeah, but they'll try to come back this direction.
That's what the wall they built was for.
But then again, I still support taking and using drones on the border. It's an invasion. Use the military and drones on the border.
Drone strike them?
Drone strike them.
We'd go to war with Mexico.
Don't care.
Wouldn't be the first time.
It wouldn't be the first time, no.
And we would not go to war with Mexico.
You're right. They're too busy fighting a
most
drug
of those
war
guys, yeah, they in fact they might send us a medal for getting rid of some of their drug people.
Those cartels are making bank right now.
But they couldn't withstand drone strikes.
They just look at it and be like, that cocaine! You know how much money we could have made?
I was told about a conspiracy theory recently. Y'all like to dabble in conspiracy theories occasionally.
Oh, conspiracy theories are fun.
No supporting evidence for this whatsoever. I'll tell you that right now. I only have word of mouth. According to some source, someone tried to assassinate Trump with a drone.
Post-presidency?
What?
Post-presidency?
Since he's been out of president.
Why?
Post-presidency.
Assuming it's correct. Why?
Okay, assuming it's correct, which I'm not saying it is.
Yeah.
But assuming it's correct. Yeah, assuming it's correct, because he's been taking and causing so much problems for the establishment. He's a danger. Because right now, he could actually prevent establishment Republicans from getting elected.
All right. Now, assuming it's incorrect.
And he could definitely.
Assuming
it's incorrect.
Assuming it's incorrect. Same question. Why?
Well, the only way assuming it's incorrect and that somebody didn't take a pot shot at him, probably to take and make it look like the government's out to get him.
You gotta keep your base. Is what you gotta do. And something tells me that there's a very large letter of the alphabet attached to this conspiracy theory.
I suspect so, yes. But the source that I got it from buys into that particular organization's mindset.
They are having to do everything they can to keep their followers.
Yeah, it's like that particular individual came to me the other day and told me that facts were fixing to come out and they were going to be removing Biden from office and putting Trump in because of all his criminal activity. And it's like, no, they can't do that.
By August, they put a.
Yeah, by August. And the thing about it is they can't do that. The U.S. Congress.
What always astonished me about people who say things like that, people who are willing to do that, or more specifically, people who are willing to believe that is correct and believe that is going to happen.
Even after they've already been blatantly lied to?
Even after they've already been blatantly lied to. Always seem to forget
repeatedly
exactly how whistleblowers are treated. Whether they tell the truth or not. I believe there's a guy by the name of Snowden who is a good example of what happens to whistleblowers.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter if the stuff comes out that if it's true, nothing's going to happen with it. The facts coming out means nothing.
Well,
otherwise Project Veritas would actually have successfully done something by now.
Yeah.
Yeah, they bring out a lot of facts, but they don't say, but nothing happens. And the thing about it is you just because you take and prove that a president was unlawfully elected does not remove him from office. But if it did remove him from office, it still wouldn't be his opponent that would get the office. It would be the vice president that would get the office.
And let's be honest.
And if you prove the vice president,
if truth behind conspiracy theories mattered, then we wouldn't know of Nixon as a thief and a coward in this day and age. But everyone knows him as exactly that.
Yeah, they would know about the fact that the CIA was watching somebody for being a Russian spy in the Democrat convention committee, and that's the reason why it was bugged.
Mm-hmm.
But we have a whole list of people that take the office if something happens to the ones who are in office. And Trump isn't on the list.
Yeah. Enough people would have to die that there is an emergency election done for Trump to even have a chance at this point.
Either die or be thrown out, disqualified because of criminal activity. Yeah.
I think it's something like 12 people is the line of succession.
Yeah. And let's be honest, if it broke down into an emergency election, who do you think would take it? Trump, who is obviously going to be one side's candidate, or, man, I'm blanking on his name. Bernie Sanders.
Bernie Sanders?
They'd never put Bernie up.
I think Trump could beat Bernie hands down.
Even the leftists don't like
Easy.
Bernie anymore.
They would have a hard time getting him to win, even with all their cheating.
Oh, if the cheaters were running it, he would never make it to the top two. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
They would establishment Democrats would never allow him to be the candidate.
Even though he is a very establishment man.
But, there would be some Bushes that would run against him. Possibly even a Cheney.
Maybe.
Because they're so popular among the Republican constituency right now.
But they're popular among the corporate bigwigs that run everything.
So, have you guys heard about this bill going around that 35 states have signed calling for term limits in Congress?
But if
Hadn't heard a thing about that.
35 states,
35 states.
all you need is a 2/3 majority and a convention of states to put it into the Constitution.
Well,
Yeah. And I hadn't heard about it.
it's
If it's
a
35
bill that they were
states-
pushing, not an amendment.
Yeah,
Not a constitution.
but if 35 states have supported the bill, they might as well just make it an amendment.
Well, we all know it's currently getting blocked,
I know
and we
that
know
they-
exactly who's trying to block it.
Yeah, Congress.
But they don't need
But
they don't need the bill if they just do a convention of states.
They really should.
now, if you take a look at more and more states are passing laws that make it illegal to enforce. There's unconstitutional gun laws from the federal government or executive orders that are unconstitutional.
They need to now that these executive orders are coming down like rain.
So it makes it a crime to enforce them. Which means federal officers trying to enforce them could be arrested.
Quite the power struggle the states are having right now.
Oh yeah, it's like just before the Civil War where you had such a battle between the states' rights people and the federalists.
At least this time it's over something that matters. Then again, I suppose that it was something that mattered last time too, but slavery was kind of dying out anyway then, and it was just sort of like a last gasp to keep it.
By the rich aristocrats of the South.
Yeah. But
All Democrats.
these gun control measures need to be killed. They should have been killed in the crib, but the whole fact that they've let it go on this long is a failure of the American people.
Save your Confederate
Well-
money, boys. We need to burn it. We need something to burn.
We could reference back to Brett, save your Confederate money, boys. It makes pretty good toilet paper.
Actually, it's probably worth a lot of money now. Oh, the Security Exchange is trying to do away with a lot of the cryptocurrencies.
SEC.
The funny thing about that is the argument they use for all of that is that it's an unstable currency because it has nothing backing it.
It's backed by the U.S. dollar.
It's not backed by anything.
Most
The price of it. The price of it in U.S. dollars wouldn't fluctuate so heavily if it was backed by the U.S. dollar. Cryptocurrency is not.
most cryptos are backed by the U.S. dollar. They are literally in. That's where their value comes from. Is the investment into them by the U.S. dollar.
No,
that means it's backed by the U.S. dollar.
The thing that makes them valuable is the fact that they're all individually unique and non-replicable. So they're backed by themselves. That's what
But-
gives them value.
You can't have them on the stock market where people will put in money for it without it being backed by the U.S. dollar.
You couldn't have it on the stock market unless it was valued in the U.S. dollar. That's not the same thing as being backed by it.
You ever wonder why these Bitcoin people are so predatory about people buying Bitcoin? It's because the value is derived by people buying into it, meaning the value is derived by the U.S. dollar.
That is not the same as being backed by
The
it.
thing about it is, If they got stock trading on the stock exchange, so they can be controlled by the FCC.
Yeah, that's true. But the argument that all these stock traders use is that it's a bad investment because it's not backed by anything, which is astonishingly sounds exactly like the U.S.
Like
dollar.
the US dollar. Well, according to a fairly famous lawyer, he believes that the reason why they're going after the cryptocurrencies is because they endanger the monopoly that the governments have on money.
Mm-hmm. Which is why they tried to get rid of the gold standard in the first place, was to put a monopoly on money.
Mm-hmm. Well, if you have a standard, the value of your money doesn't really take and fluctuate.
Yeah.
But if you're just paper backed by paper, your money's worthless. It's only worth what the government says it's worth.
Yeah.
Being that the trade for international trade is done in U.S. dollars, and there's even some foreign countries that use the U.S. dollar as their money system. This, the Chinese are trying to usurp the U.S.'s position in the world money field. One thing they could do is go through and come out and say, we will only exchange yuan at 20 billion to $1.
That would crash their economy.
That would crash their economy.
Because everyone would stop trading with it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because their money would be worthless.
It would,
of America,
they would basically take the standardizing of their own currency out of their hands on the global stage.
Yes. And right now, they set how much the exchange rate is for their currency. Foot on that nonsense. Go through and as the world monetary leader, refuse to make the exchange, except at such an outlandish amount that that it crashes the value of their money, making it worth less than toilet paper.
They'll basically have to run through other hoops to where they would have to change the currency with another currency before they can trade it with our currency, or vice versa.
Yep.
Well, not vice versa, because they've already set their standard. So what people can technically do is they could trade the US dollar for yuan or won or whatever it's pronounced as, and then trade that for another currency, then trade that for the US dollar, then trade it back, and you have a feedback loop, if you will, where you could just make money.
Yeah. But essentially speaking, they would have to go through a third party, like change and the yuan for euros in order to buy U.S. dollars.
Yeah.
But since euros are priced over the U.S. dollar, you think the economists aren't going to look at that and say, if America's charging you this much for $1, we're going to charge you this much more for a euro.
Yes, that probably would be the case.
Yeah.
Any type of money system that is worth more than the dollar would not exchange with it.
They would refuse to, because they'd just be losing money.
It also would make all it also would make all of these loans they're making to all these third world countries worthless.
It would also make the loan that we owe them worthless.
So what you do is you
Right.
ask the money. Well, okay, you ask them to give you the money that they already owe you, or no, just go ahead and
In American dollars.
in American dollars. Then you make their loan worthless.
And you pay their loan in yuan at the exchange rate.
Meaning you can effectively spend like $5 to pay for the entire thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
After they've already paid you back.
Yeah, after they pay you back, yeah.
Or
Is
if you
underhanded
really wanted,
economics, but it would work. It would
really
cause a war, but it would work.
if you really wanted to be scummy about it, you wouldn't have them pay you back until you changed it.
Oh yeah, you definitely wouldn't.
Because then you would have debt trapped them.
Yeah.
But like I said, it would cause a war, but we'd be out of debt. It would be cleaner just to say, yeah, we're defaulting on this loan. We're not paying it.
No. We have control over the money value.
I didn't say that it wouldn't. I didn't say that it wouldn't make things interesting. I said it would just be easier and faster. Defaulting
ruins your credit.
America's credit was ruined a long time ago.
If we can have a deficit as large as we have and still dare to say that the United States has fiscal credit, that's just blatantly lying.
That's the only reason why they can run these huge debts is because we have fiscal credit. Eventually, people are going to refuse to loan money to the government.
Except they won't. See, here's what we've reached the point to where we're beyond the numbers. This is politics. People know that because the numbers are a representation of reality. That's what they are. If you have a low credit score, it means you're not likely to pay back the loan. So people logically should stop loaning to you. But America's a government, and it's a government that has the ability to print money. So in the mind of the people who are giving out the loans, America still has great credit because it still has the ability to print money.
But anyone with a brain knows that if they were actually printing money, then they wouldn't need the loan in the first place.
But with debt comes political clout.
Yeah.
So they have transcended the point of just money by having the government as their debt slave. The government does what they want.
Which is actually a pretty common tactic, especially in the Far East, of just creating debt slaves.
Well, there is a reason the Bible says, "Oh, no man, nothing."
Yeah.
Because if you took and owed it to them, you really couldn't refuse them anything they demand. But that was also during the age in which you had debtor's prison.
True. Although debtor's prison still exists in many countries.
But it doesn't exist here.
Americans get off light with our laws. We get off really light. We wouldn't have half the country as debt slaves if we had the old laws.
That's why, the way I see it, regardless of what these financial experts say, my advice is to never use your credit card for anything ever.
If you take and look at your brother's credit history,
Which one? We have a lot of them.
Well, there's one that I'm thinking
Well,
of,
I'm
and
not gonna
he's
go
the
into
one who
which
has the
one.
worst credit history. Our dear
the whole
eldest brother.
family would have had to. Our whole family would have to be bailing him out of his debts to keep him out of debtor's prison.
I know what
And
when you're talking about now.
Yeah.
and it would take and be a major hit to the whole family because it's either support his family or pay his debts.
I'm pretty sure I could pay his debt at this point.
No, you couldn't.
How far in the hole is he?
Well, he was over 12,000 in the hole just in the car that got repossessed.
Oh, see, he's not even the worst off one. I don't know what you're talking about.
12,000 in the hole. I can pay that. I'm not going to
That's
pay
not
it,
even counting.
but I could.
Yeah,
He's not even
but
the
that's
worst
not even
off
counting
of
any
them.
others.
He's not even the worst.
Oh no, yes, you're right. You're right. Your second oldest is the worst off. He's
Really?
got 85,000 in student loan debt.
Oof, I forgot about that.
How?
Maybe because I don't see his degree as legitimate.
I don't see his degree as legitimate either, but I still know that he buried himself.
Well, he is the one who kind of went bankrupt in China for a while. Literally.
Yes, he ran out of money in China.
He's also the one that went socialist because he wants the government to pay his student loan debts.
I'm sorry, no, he did not go socialist. He went straight up commie.
Yeah. But I'm not about to name anybody because I don't want to face a libel suit.
It's defamation anyway.
Okay, defamation suit.
Although what we said was not irregardless
Though he wouldn't get anything out of me.
of what we said.
Well,
No, it's totally true, and so therefore we're actually exempt from
both of them, if we help them out,
defamation.
Regardless of whether we can currently, if we were capable of it, and if we were to help them out, they would never learn anything from the process. We would only be hurting them, and they would get themselves in debt again.
Now, I grant you that the one that has the greatest debt also has the greatest income.
And if he wanted to, he could get rid of that debt.
Yeah. But Biden promised to get rid of student loan.
The thing is, though, that student loan forgiveness, things like that, they usually come with a stipulation. And that stipulation is usually based around the amount you make a year. Even if he followed through on his promise, which I don't think he will because he wants to make debt slaves. But even if he did follow through on that promise, our brother would not apply.
I don't think he makes that much. Not enough to be exempt from that.
Does he make more than $30,000 a year?
Oh yes, wow.
Then he doesn't apply.
I think it's closer to $80,000.
If you make more than $30,000 a year, you do not apply for student loan forgiveness.
That doesn't sound right. That sounds way too low.
I thought it was 100,000.
That's more in the
It is
ballpark.
not 100,000. They've been very clear of it where I work because the concept affects a lot of people here. Because there's a lot of people that joined my specific line of work specifically to dig themselves out of debt. It is very common knowledge here.
Now, the Biden's already said he's not going to do it anyway.
Yeah. Like I said, though, regardless of that's why I put the little addendum there at the beginning that even if he did, which I don't think he's going to, our brother would not apply. Man, I'm actually going to have to put effort into editing this one. Apart from just finding the point where
Yes,
Dad
you're going to.
cut out. Well, we've gone off topic, and the last 10 minutes is going to have to get edited out. But we're still over an hour right now, so we're still within our range to close out if necessary.
Would you like to close us out, Josh?
I mean, as far as I'm concerned, if you leave it to me, that will be our closing. And I'll just cut it there and add the sticker. If you want to go into more detail, that's your prerogative.
I'm good.